Hey guys, my name is Eric. Uh, I've been with Cisco Labs ever since it was LeapSet, like quite a few of you as well. Starting to feel like a dinosaur now. Um, and I guess I'm making history because I'm the first guy to do an innovation session in shorts and slippers. So today I just wanted to, I've been a huge nut with like cryptocurrencies and blockchains. It's really gotten my attention over the past couple years, and almost every night I'm spending my free time reading a few articles on it. So while not everything has a proper reference here, this is sort of like accumulated knowledge over time. In case if anyone's wondering, that's a map of like the internet. It's everybody. It's a heat map of, geography that has location to the internet, which is, think of it as potential users. So I wanted to start off, this headline is from a newspaper, and it kind of resonates in my brain because it's where blockchains started. It's a headline to a newspaper. It was actually a note that was dropped into the Genesis block of the Bitcoin network. It represents like the zeitgeist of the time, but people also think it was put in there as, proof of, the Genesis block coming at the right time. So blockchain, of course, came with Bitcoin. Without Bitcoin, there would be no blockchains, or at least back then. Maybe it could have manifested from something else. And it all started with a general distrust of the economy. Everything was starting to tank. People were losing trust, and people were losing money as well. And it wasn't because of what any of one person did. It had to do with, how everything above us operated. And there was I called it the American recession, but it was the Great Recession, I guess is the proper name. But it rippled throughout the whole world. And in retrospect for me, it reminded me in my early 20s that, this whole world is connected. Yeah, there's national borders. Yeah, there's governments that need to negotiate with each other, but we're all people that live on this same planet, right? We need to work together. And this Bitcoin concept, it just didn't come out of nowhere. It manifested ever since the 1990s. People were trying to get some sort of money that a computer can use. I remember the first time I got a Power PC when I was a kid. One of the first things I thought was, oh, what if you could have like a cool little like .money file or whatever? But then I was like, oh, you could just copy paste that money. Oh, you could become infinitely rich by just doubling it all the time. And that was the problem that people were trying to solve. It was called a double spend problem. And honestly, when I heard about Bitcoin within weeks of the network first launching, I regret the fact that I immediately dismissed it. I kind of just said, oh, that's not viable, it won't work. And I was just in my own little ignorant bubble. And it happened because of this thing called blockchain. These are some of the projects that came beforehand where people were trying to get a digital form of money. There was Hashcash, there was BitGold. And BitGold's interesting too because the man behind BitGold there's lots of indicators that that guy is Satoshi Nakamoto. But who knows? That Satoshi could be a group of people. No one will ever know, and it makes sense. If you disruptive technologies, especially on this scale, if you proclaim yourself as the inventor, you could become a target. And then, of course, when I was a kid, who would have known? But BitTorrent actually influenced how cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin came with the whole peer-to-peer network thing. There's no centralized server. Everybody's sharing with each other, right? And that's the powerful part. The internet transcends national barriers. I know that there was a previous innovation session on cryptocurrencies, but I just want to go over this really quick. Blockchains have three big traits. The first one is, of course, decentralization. Nobody's truly in charge. There's the whole permissionless aspect where anybody can participate, anybody can be a part of it. And then there's the whole immutability aspect as well, which is huge. So when you're attaching blocks into a blockchain, you're essentially picking transactions that people want to make. This is as a miner, by the way. So when you're mining, you're choosing which transactions you want to accept into this blockchain, and then essentially coming up with this big, with a hash value, and that's derived from like a hash value of all the transactions in something called a Merkle tree. But what makes it explicitly immutable is the fact that each subsequent block is built off of the hash from the previous block. So if you get a transaction in and then other blocks come along, your transaction is sort of like more and more cryptographically secured. It's kind of like a layer of sap. If you've ever seen Jurassic Park, you know, a layer of sap goes over the mosquito, and the mosquito gets trapped in there, and then another layer of sap comes over, and then like the mosquito is double trapped. So that's kind of like how a blockchain works. As the blocks stack, that transaction is burnt in time, and it'll never go away. And then, of course, the whole essence of mining. I try to explain mining in like two sentences. Is that you're guessing a number. That's all it is. You just guess a number, and if you find a solution with the minimum amount of zeros or whatever the network is requiring at that moment, then congratulations, you found the block. It's just a guessing game, and that's kind of amazing to me. And maybe it's kind of mimics the gold rush in California, you know, like nobody really knew where they were going to find gold. They just started digging, and some people got lucky, some people didn't. It was a guessing game. So I quoted myself. I really see this technology as something that could change this planet, how humans work together and how it transcends, you know, national governments. If anyone hasn't read this book, I highly suggest it. It's called The Internet of Money. It's by this guy called Andres Antonopoulos, hard to pronounce. And if you don't want to read his book, he's got a bunch of YouTube videos that really help you understand, you know, not just the impact of Bitcoin, but the impact of blockchain. And so we have an internet of money out now. So we don't just have to transact in dollars and rupees. It's kind of weird. We could transact with something that's not tangible, something that's, you know, you move with, you know, something like a private RSA key. There's no need for bank accounts. it's funny. Like I used to always think that you'd have to put your money in a bank for it to be safe. That's not true anymore. You could hold your own money and be the master of your own money, all with a private key. And as well, I always thought, credit cards were the way forward, 10 years ago. That might not be the case anymore. Like if any of you have some sort of cryptocurrency wallet on you, we can do a transaction peer-to-peer fairly quickly. And this blockchain enables that there's like a trustless model. Anyone can participate anonymously. You don't have to, send, I don't know what the equivalent of a social security number is here in Sri Lanka, but you don't have to provide any means of identification. There is no such thing as KYC or know your customer. Anyone can just jump on, mine, transact, whatever. And as well as thinking about it, blockchain is essentially a form of data storage. It's kind of like a database. It's not really that efficient right now, but it is a means of storing data for things that you don't want to change once you store it, right? And that's kind of powerful because there's stories of, data getting manipulated at companies, and people's lives can be at risk if data gets manipulated, or a society's livelihood can be brought down if data gets manipulated nowadays. So what I am seeing is that the world we live in is kind of, it's asking for a change. I've been following the International Monetary Fund, their blog, and Christine Lagarde, who's the managing director, said just a couple weeks ago, while the sun is shining, we see clouds accumulating on the horizon. And there's many reasons for that. The first is there's kind of like this trade war starting to happen. Like my country's president is, demanding that other countries pay up to America in some way or another, that, that we're being taken advantage of. So we're going to put these walls against free trade. And, free trade is essentially what made the world is what it is today. If you put walls up against trading with another society or other country, then you're going to have problems. We're in this world together. No one country is completely self-sufficient. We need to rely on each other somehow. And so with all these walls up, business people, they kind of lose trust. They don't, since there's elevated risk, the business opportunity is sort of devalued, so to speak. I mean, imagine if you were trying to build a new product that you had to distribute to many countries across the earth, and then all of a sudden your bottom line is hit by 20 to 30% because you need to get some products into the American market. It's ultimately going to hurt things and slow things down. And nobody really sees how supply chains work, or at least in America. You just see the product on the shelf and you want to buy it. But if you cannot set up a supply chain to America, you're not going to get pretty far. The consumers in America are very willing to spend. And yeah, I'll stop there. The next thing is that a Cold War could be possible again. There was news going around last week, hallelujah, North Korea isn't doing nuclear testing anymore. And don't believe that that's good news. That means North Korea has nuclear warheads. There's only one reason to stop, right? And that's because you finally did what you had to do. And Kim Jong-un built his nuke. I don't know whether he could, launch it accurately yet, but he's got it. And of course, there's like a growing proxy war between the United States and Russia right now, especially in Syria. Just these two facts alone, and I'm sure that there's several others, but things can escalate quickly here. Honestly, wars can come out of nowhere, and it's kind of outside of our control. It's like in the governments, but it can happen. And then, societies can get, flattened, and currencies can get devalued. Government services can just stop. So it's something to keep in the back of your head. And of course, there's corrupt and misdirected governments. There's oligarchies, plutocracies. There's people that are in the government that it seems like they only care about themselves. Like they'll take a bribe, no problem. They'll do whatever it is to make themselves extraordinarily comfortable at the expense of the people. And the world is going into debt as well. I put two examples here, Sri Lanka and USA. So Sri Lanka's debt has been growing considerably, and as well as the USA's. So this is the debt to GDP ratio. So 80% is a pretty alarming size for any standard country. But notice that the US is at 200%. The only reason why the US gets to stay at 200% comfortably is because it has a lot of GDP per capita. It's kind of like an insurance policy, so to speak, because consumers are willing to spend, right? I didn't put it here, but for reference, China is also at a big risk of defaulting. While China owns maybe 20–25% of the US debt, its GDP to debt ratio, debt to GDP ratio is at 200% as well, but the GDP per capita is at like 6,000 US dollars equivalent. So, the financial system is on a slippery slope, right? Like something could happen and it could get hit hard again, just like how the recession happened 7 years ago. And then another thing to know is that this world is full of fake money. The rupees are fake, dollars are fake. Our respective governments print this money out of nowhere, like it just comes from magic, right? And there's many systems which enable this. If you don't know about fractional reserve banking, it's something to maybe Google and read a Wikipedia article on, as well as derivatives. Derivatives is like value that is derived from, making a bet on something else. It's kind of like, renowned bet. That's exactly what it is. It's a derivative. It's extracted from an asset where you could sort of do anything you want with it. You could bet on whether it's going to rise or fall. You could pretty much do anything with it. It's completely made up. And, maybe you should just, think of a number in your head, like how much money exists, and then go and do some of your own research and find out, okay, how much money actually exists, how much debt exists, and I guarantee you that you will be way off. You will completely underestimate that figure. And of course, the money is inflationary. It's like a big WTF moment. Like, if I'm storing money in a savings account, that money is going, yeah, it's still the same $10,000 that you had 10 years ago, but that $10,000 is actually worth like $4,000, after prolonged savings. And that's because the governments are just printing whatever they want to print. They're accumulating debt without a plan to repay that debt. And it's kind of scary. Like, we were all raised to, balance our checkbook, make sure we don't spend more than we make, right? But that's exactly what the governments of this world are doing. And I don't know why it's okay. Like, there's governments that'll never repay their debt. And I guess it's a free market. There has to be winners and losers, right? But when there's more debt than value, how does that ever get repaid back on a worldly scale? So we all know what Web 1, Web 2 is, and there's this big question of what Web 3 is. And this is just my theory. It's subjective. Web 3 is very ill-defined, but I really think that blockchain has a huge role to play in it, because of those three traits that I mentioned earlier. Trustlessness, decentralization, and of course immutability. If any of you guys know about Ethereum, this is one of the masterminds behind it. His name is Vitalik Buterin. He looks like an alien. He talks like an alien, sort of. And he wears really, really out there t-shirts. I don't know if you can see it, but there's like a rainbow with UFOs and a unicorn llama. But anyways, while Bitcoin was like, just a store of value, transfer of value, electronic cash, whatever, Ethereum is sort of like a programmatic platform that's built on top of a blockchain. And you could do so many more things with it besides just, transfer, some value to another person. You could actually program on it. You could make applications where no intermediary is really necessary. And it's still really in its infancy, but the implications of the possibilities are nearly endless to transform, society as we know it. So like I said, you could write a script or a program, you could upload it to this network, and it gets copied on every single node out there to be executed by someone else or by you. There's no need to rely on Amazon AWS or your own server for that matter. However, one thing to know with this is that scaling efficiently is a huge challenge. Like, I know sharding was a huge challenge for us. Imagine sharding on a network of 20,000 P2P nodes. How do you do that? That's beyond my mind. And of course, trustless. The new internet. You don't need to necessarily trust somebody to get something done, right? And that's huge. On the internet, you can't trust anybody. Anybody could snake you or steal from you without really your knowledge. It can just happen. But it enables this because it keeps everybody safe with modern day cryptography. Like I said, anyone might join, anyone may participate. And one of the big, three words that were in one of Andres Antonopoulos' videos was bank the unbanked. Like half the population of the world, these people don't have bank accounts. And it's the mere fact that, banks don't see a business opportunity into allowing these people to be banked. It's just not a viable profitable opportunity. And of course, I don't think Web 3.0 has to just do with blockchains, of course. Many things come to manifest into, you know, one big picture, and it's not limited to these two, of course, but I really think that AI and semantic word processing could really do with that. So semantic word processing is, you know, you type a sentence into a computer and the computer knows what message you conveyed. It's not just doing spell check. It's knowing the idea behind what you want or what you said. As well as, you know, high performance web applications. You might not need to make a native app ever again with new technologies. Okay, so moving on to Web 3, from Web 3, let's look at potential use cases for blockchains. It could serve identity management. Instead of needing a driver's license or a passport, it could all be recorded onto a blockchain. The medical industry, you know, they also need this form of immutability. You know, there's databases of, you know, medical records, prescriptions, and if somebody goes into that and alters it, people can die. It's very, you know, it's very valuable data for people's livelihoods when it comes to medical records, and it's just powerful what it can do, right? You could track, you know, educational degrees and certificates. You know, I don't know about you guys, but I've lost my diploma before, and I've had to call up my university and pay the $150 it was to get a new one. Yeah, if it was just on a blockchain linked to my identity, then that problem wouldn't be around. I mean, why do diplomas have to be on paper? Why does it have to be, you know, go through some strict verification process so somebody knows that you have a diploma, right? It shouldn't be that hard. The World Food Program actually is doing something very interesting with blockchain. And I really think if there's like further case studies, I really got to look into it. But World Food Program is distributing vouchers off of a Ethereum network clone. So, you know, say you're a Syrian refugee, right? The World Food Program will give you vouchers on a blockchain. And here's the special part. Not the special, but very interesting part, is that these refugees are not managing their own private keys. Their private keys are actually linked to their biometrics in a retinal scan. And I really do think, like, if you could link biometrics and cryptocurrencies together, then hey, you have a very, very sticky use case, because therefore you could just walk around and use your fingerprint or your retinal scan to pay. Like, you won't need to carry around a wallet. You won't need to carry around a phone with Apple Pay. It's just you that can pay and nothing else. Decentralized exchanges. When I was a kid, I got really into trading stocks, and you know, you have to go through this whole, you know, verification process of, you know, who you are. You know your customer. Make sure that the company who you're trading with knows who you are, so the government can properly tax you or whatever. There's no need to do that anymore. You could log on to one of these decentralized exchanges and just start trading all with your private key. There's no KYC involved at all. And my first experience using one of these decentralized exchanges was just powerful. I remember going through all this onboarding stuff for, you know, Ameritrade, and all that's out the window. It's not relevant anymore. Of course, voting. People can vote on a blockchain, and those votes become immutable. There's no one to try and, I mean, I guess if you set it up right, there's no one to try and manipulate those votes. There was actually a trial with this, I can't remember, some African country. It wasn't done properly, in my opinion, but votes were logged onto a blockchain for the first time in history. There's, more use cases, but these are the ones that really stick to my mind right now when I think about blockchain. So yeah, I mean, just you could read on it and you can find so many different use cases. It's crazy. And so I wanted to end it with kind of a speculation slide on cryptocurrencies. I remember when I was first starting to figure this out. This is how I obtained my view here. I kind of thought about what's the value of this, what's the value of that, what's the value of those things, and so just for reference, Sri Lanka GDP is $81 billion per year. Bitcoin's twice as valuable as Sri Lanka. The whole cryptocurrency market cap, for that matter, because there's Bitcoin, but there's so many things that came from Bitcoin as well. For those previous use cases here, there's nearly coins trying to solve every one of these problems. Not that they actually will. Many of them will just vaporize because there's lots of quick get-rich-quick schemes going on, but there are many alternative forms of cryptocurrencies trying to solve other problems than just money. So the whole market cap for crypto is 425. Okay, look at Apple. That's actually slightly lower than it should be. Apple is really on the verge of crossing that $1 trillion mark. So the whole cryptocurrency market cap is half of what Apple's worth right now. All gold on Earth is $8 trillion. If Bitcoin obtains the market cap of gold one day, that's $500,000 per Bitcoin. The US GDP is 19. Now here's where it starts getting really, really interesting. All the money in the stock markets is $73 trillion. In stock markets, people say Bitcoin is a speculative asset. Okay, stock markets are definitely speculative, and look how much more it's worth. And it's around the same as the world GDP. Global money supply is only 90 trillion. So I would have thought there would be more money, to be honest, but there's not. There's more debt than money, a lot more debt than money. The math doesn't work out. And then, of course, these derivatives came. Derivatives, were one of those reasons for the 2009 crash and stuff. And this is just where it blows all out of proportion. And like these derivatives, it's not real. It's not money. It's like a bet on money. And you could have derivatives for your derivatives. You could have derivatives for your derivatives for your derivatives. Like people just make up money out of nowhere. Like you make it. There's these firms, they make a derivative, and then boom, $10 million out of nowhere. Their company is now worth $10 million more because they manage this special derivative, right? It's obscene. And the ceiling, I don't see a ceiling right now. Keep in mind that this is my personal opinion on where the market will go, but the market cap is just so crazy small compared to the rest of the world. And if the rest of the world needs change, like I said previously, then the growth isn't going to stop. And it could be happening at a logarithmic scale, right? Or an exponential scale. Like there were so many times where I've heard people say, I missed the wagon, right? Bitcoin's too high. It's going to crash and burn now. It's dead. You want to know how many times I've heard Bitcoin is dead? Like 7, 8. So I mean, John McAfee, he's crazy in the head, but I think he might be right here. And I'm also following some people on Twitter who kind of do like a logarithmic extrapolation of the trend of where the cryptocurrency market's going, or this one, Bitcoin specific. So this guy, he took all the data from, you know, all the Bitcoin swings and stuff, and he extrapolates it into a rainbow chart. So when it goes down into these indigo and blue areas of the rainbow, he says it's buy time. Like this is like a channel for its value to travel. And he puts it on a logarithmic chart. And if things stay within that chart and his theory holds true, then John McAfee could be right. Maybe not by 2020, maybe a year or two after that, I don't know. But things can change, you know, within a few years before our eyes. And yeah, that's just, I want everybody to see it how I'm trying to look at it. So yeah, anyone have any questions?